It all started as just another routine flight, passengers settling into their seats, the gentle hum of the engines building up, and that familiar voice over the intercom welcoming everyone on board. But nobody could have predicted how fast things would spiral out of control at 30,000 feet in the air. In the middle of a crowded cabin, one woman's behavior turned a peaceful journey into a tense and unforgettable scene. Witnesses say she was already acting odd during boarding, making loud comments and throwing judgmental looks. But it wasn't until the flight was cruising smoothly that the situation took a sharp turn. She started targeting one of the flight attendants, someone just doing their job with patience and professionalism. Passengers described the moment as uncomfortable at first, then downright shocking. Without warning, things escalated. The woman, now visibly angry, crossed a line that no one saw coming. The insult, the slap, it happened in seconds, but the impact left everyone frozen. The crew acted fast, trying to de-escalate the situation, but the damage was done. The pilot was alerted. The decision was made. An emergency landing wasn't part of the plan, but keeping passengers and crew safe had to come first. As the plane began its descent, tension filled the cabin. People whispered. Phones started recording. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Would she be removed? Would she face consequences for what she did? No one knew exactly how it would play out, but everyone could feel it. Something big was about to happen. And just when you thought things couldn't get more intense, the pilot stepped out of the cockpit. Stick around, because what happens after the landing will leave you speechless. The moment the pilot appeared, the energy in the cabin shifted. He didn't say a word at first, just walked calmly down the aisle, eyes focused, expression serious. You could tell he wasn't just checking in. This wasn't normal. He stopped right where the chaos had started, next to the woman still seated, arms crossed, clearly not bothered by what had just happened. The flight attendant she'd lashed out at was now in the galley, quietly being comforted by a fellow crew member. You could see the pain in their eyes, but they were holding it together. The pilot leaned in and spoke in a low voice. Passengers nearby tried to listen, but most of what was said was drowned out by the noise of the plane. Still, you could catch a few sharp phrases: unacceptable behavior, crew safety, federal regulations. The woman didn't seem fazed. In fact, she rolled her eyes. She was acting like nothing she'd done mattered, as if she were above the rules. Some people shook their heads, others pulled out their phones again. Everyone wanted to capture what felt like the climax of a drama unfolding in real time. But then came the announcement. We've made the decision to land at the nearest airport due to a passenger disturbance. Please remain in your seats and keep calm. That was it. Short, controlled, but heavy. People looked at each other, confused, nervous. Where were they landing? What would happen to her? And most of all, what made her snap like that in the first place? Was this just about a small inconvenience, or was there something deeper going on? No one had all the answers yet, but as the wheels began to lower and the ground came closer, one thing was clear: this flight was far from over. As the plane began its descent, the cabin was filled with an uneasy silence. People were still whispering, exchanging theories about what had happened. Some were angry, others just shocked. A few rows behind the woman, a couple was quietly discussing how it all started. She was upset over her seat, the man said. Something about being too close to the back. His partner added, but then she made that comment about the attendant's accent. That's when it started getting uncomfortable. That's what really started to disturb people, her words. The flight attendant she targeted had been nothing but polite, helping passengers with calm professionalism. But when they asked her to stow her bag correctly, the woman snapped. Witnesses said she made a sarcastic remark about not understanding foreign accents, loud enough for people around her to hear. It wasn't just rude, it was personal. And for the crew member trying to do their job, it was humiliating. In the front row, a business traveler quietly filmed the scene on his phone, trying not to draw attention. Across the aisle, a teenage girl clutched her journal, scribbling down what she was seeing. Every passenger seemed to be processing the event in their own way, but the tension tied them all together. Meanwhile, in the galley, the flight attendant sat holding back tears. A fellow crew member whispered, "Don't let her get to you. You handled it with grace." But it was clear the words had cut deep. This wasn't just about being slapped. It was about being disrespected, demeaned, and singled out for something that had nothing to do with job performance. And still, the woman showed no sign of remorse. The plane was just minutes from landing now. Emergency crews had been contacted, but no one, not even the pilot, could predict how things would unfold once they hit the ground. The wheels hit the tarmac with a jolt, but it wasn't your usual smooth landing. You could feel it, the urgency, the pressure. No one clapped, no one spoke. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath as the plane taxied to a stop, far from the main terminal. Outside the windows, you could see flashing lights, airport security vehicles, a police SUV, and a few ground crew members rushing toward the aircraft. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The captain's voice came on again, calm but firm. "Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Authorities will be boarding shortly." That's when it got real. The woman finally seemed to grasp that this wasn't just a warning or a scare tactic. Her body stiffened. She looked around, realizing the cameras were still on her. Some passengers had stopped hiding their phones, openly recording now. She tried to say something, to the people nearby, to the flight crew, but the words didn't come out right. Her confidence from earlier was cracking. Still, she didn't apologize. Instead, she started defending herself. "It was just a misunderstanding," she mumbled. "People overreacted." But no one bought it. The crew stayed professional, but their eyes said it all. They were tired, they were hurt, and they were done. Meanwhile, the flight attendant she had slapped remained out of sight, still seated near the back, quietly holding onto a bottle of water someone had given her. She hadn't said much since the landing, but her silence spoke louder than anything else. She had every right to be furious, but all she showed was quiet strength. Then came a knock at the door, loud, sharp, the kind that made everyone freeze again. A security officer's voice followed, muffled but unmistakable. "We're ready." And that's when the cabin doors slowly began to open. As the cabin door creaked open, all eyes turned forward. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, their expressions unreadable, scanning the rows quickly. One pointed toward the woman, and the other followed without hesitation. For a moment, it felt like everything would finally be handled, until one of the officers unexpectedly turned to the flight crew and said, "We need to speak with the attendant as well." A quiet wave of confusion spread through the cabin. Passengers glanced at each other. Whispers filled the air. Was this routine? Why would they need the flight attendant? She had been the one attacked. The crew hesitated, exchanging a quick glance before one of them went to the back to get her. As she stepped forward, the room seemed to pause again. You could see she was trying to stay composed, but her hands were slightly shaking. The officer asked her to confirm her version of what happened, right there, in front of everyone. She spoke clearly, voice steady despite the weight of it all, explaining how she was simply doing her job when the woman lashed out both verbally and physically. But then came the twist no one saw coming. The woman, still in her seat, suddenly claimed she had video evidence that the attendant had provoked her. She reached into her bag, pulling out her phone, saying she'd been recording for her own protection. The officers paused, clearly caught off guard. The passengers around her looked stunned. Was it true? Did she really have footage that could change the story? But the strangest part, no one remembered seeing her record anything. Not during the slap, not during the argument, yet here she was, holding up her phone like it was the final word. The officer took the device carefully, turned it on, and began to review. That's when the real tension began, because if what she claimed was true, everything might not be as clear-cut as it seemed. The officer scrolled through the woman's phone, the cabin silent except for the faint hum of the engines. Every passenger was watching, waiting to see if this so-called evidence would change everything. The woman sat there with a smug look, like she thought she had outsmarted everyone. But the officer's face didn't shift. He kept watching. No reaction, just quiet focus. After a few tense minutes, he handed the phone to his partner, who reviewed it just as carefully. Then they both turned to the pilot and the flight attendant. "There's nothing here," the officer said. "The video was taken earlier, during boarding. It cuts off before the incident." A few passengers let out soft gasps. The woman's eyes darted around, her confidence fading fast. She tried to argue, saying the video must have been deleted somehow, but no one was buying it anymore. The officers didn't respond to her excuses. Instead, they calmly asked her to gather her things. She hesitated, then finally stood up as the passengers watched in silence. Her energy was gone. No shouting this time, no defiance. Just quiet steps down the aisle, followed closely by security. As she was led off the plane, the flight attendant stood nearby, still calm, still composed. The crew and passengers shared quiet nods of support. It felt like justice had been served, until one final twist. As the captain spoke with the officers, a flight attendant from the jump seat leaned in and whispered something into his ear. He nodded slowly, then turned to the remaining passengers. "There's been a delay," he announced. A second passenger was seen encouraging the woman's behavior, recording her reactions and laughing during the incident. "We're reviewing footage now." The mood shifted again. Turns out, someone else on that flight might not have been just a witness, but a quiet instigator hiding in plain sight. The officers reviewed the cabin footage again, this time looking beyond the main scene. And there it was, another passenger, sitting just a few rows behind, seen smirking, filming, and even whispering comments that seemed to fuel the woman's outburst. He wasn't loud or obvious, but his body language said everything. He nudged her, laughed at her remarks, and at one point even gave her a thumbs up when she raised her voice at the crew. It didn't take long for the authorities to act. The second passenger was quietly asked to step off the plane. No drama, no shouting, just a stunned expression when he realized he'd been caught. As he walked off, the rest of the passengers sat in silence, processing everything that had just unfolded on what should have been a normal flight. The pilot returned to the intercom once things had settled. "We appreciate your patience today," he said. "Our crew is here to serve and protect, and today they did exactly that." His voice carried a quiet strength, the kind that made people feel safe again. A few passengers even clapped, not out of relief, but out of respect. The flight attendant returned to her duties later, still shaken but grateful for the support. Several passengers stopped to thank her as they deplaned at their final destination. One woman handed her a small note that read, "You handled it with grace. Don't let one person dim your light." In the end, justice wasn't just about someone being removed from a plane. It was about people standing up for what's right, even in the face of aggression. It was a reminder that respect still matters, and that even at 30,000 feet, kindness and courage can rise above the noise. And that's how one flight turned into a lesson none of them would forget.